Jai Hind. The topic which we are going to discuss today is SQL constraints. That is, we are going to see what is the meaning of constraint and why we need these constraints in our database and how to implement these constraints in DBMS, especially in the SQL language. So let's start with what is a constraint. So when we say what is a constraint, then it generally they are also known by the name integrity constraints. That is, constraints, why we require the constraints? We require the constraints to maintain the integrity of our database. And these are the rules which we want to apply in our database, in our tables, so that the integrity remains maintained. For example, if I say that in a field I want to enter a age, then we are aware that age cannot be 0. For example, I am maintaining a database where I need to keep a record of all the students right from class nursery to class 12th. Then in that case, I am aware that the age field, it can never be 0. Then this implies that whenever and suppose that particular school, it admitted the students above 4 years of age, then in that case 0 to 4 years should not be acceptable in the age field. So this is a constraint. And why I need this constraint? Because according to my application, this is the requirement for the age field. So they are the integrity constraints which are to be imposed on the data. Beside the cell name, for example, what is a name? Age is my cell name, then the cell length and the cell data type. There are other parameters, that is other data constraints that can be passed to the DBA at the cell creation time. Cell creation, that is when you create a table. So whenever you are creating a table, you need to give these constraints. Few are the default one, for example, your field name, then field length, field data type. But other than these, I also require certain other constraints, integrity constraints, which I just shown in the case of field age. So these data constraints, they are connected to a cell by the DBA as a flag. So whenever you are trying to enter an age, for example 2, in this field, then your database, your admin DBA, from there error message will come that this entry is not allowed. So how it is being done? That whenever you set a constraint on a particular field, then a corresponding flag is set in the table description. Whenever you are entering the data in that table, at that time, all such flag values, they are checked against the newly entered row. If there is some problem, then the problem is reported to the user. Otherwise, that particular data is entered in the table. Whenever user attempts to load a cell with data, the DBA will check the data being loaded against the data constraints which we have defined during the creation time. If the data loaded fails to satisfy any of the data constraint, then the DBA will not load, that the data is not added to the table, and an error message would be displayed to the user. How we implement the constraint? We can apply the constraint at 2 levels. One is at column level and another one is at table level. What the column level constraint says? It says they are defined along with the column definition. So whenever you are defining a column, at that time you provide these constraints. These constraints can be applied to any one of a column at a time. If the constraint spans across multiple columns, then the table level constraints they are used. Table level constraint, if the data constraint attached to a specific cell in a table references the content of another cell in the table, then the table level constraint is used. How we create a constraint? We create a constraint on a table when we are creating the table. So whenever we are creating a table, we will attach the constraint at that time. Or if you forgot to add some constraint during the creation time, then SQL permits to add that constraint with the help of the alter table statement. This is a simple way of adding the constraint, which we are going to refer again and again when we are going to discuss different types of constraint. So how we apply the constraint? It is the syntax for my create table SQL statement. So here create table, then the table name, and then what you people do? Then you provide column name, its data type, its data size if it is required at that time. After all these things, you will write the type of the constraint which you want to apply on this particular column 1. Similarly, this constraint is applicable for the column 2, this constraint for the column 3, and so on. What are the different types of constraints available? Not null. Whenever I apply this constraint, it will ensure that every time the user gives some value to that particular column. So it ensures that a column cannot have a null value. Similarly, if I want that each value in that particular column, it should not be repeated, then in that case, I can apply a constraint by the name unique, and it ensures that all the values in that particular column, they are not don't repeat, they are the unique ones. Not null and unique. So whenever I want that my column, it should have the unique value as well as it should not remain not null. So I will apply the primary key. Also, we have seen the primary key concept in the SQL. Whenever we want to, that is your primary key, it is used to uniquely identify the instance, a particular instance in my table. Another important constraint is the foreign key, that is whenever I want to relate my secondary table with the primary table, then in the primary table I am having a primary key, but in the secondary table what I am having a reference key. With the help of this reference key, which is also known by the name foreign key, we relate these two tables. So it prevents the actions that would destroy the links between the tables. Then the check, it will ensure if some values in a column satisfies a specific condition. For example, in the age, what we have seen that it should not accept the values from 0 to 3.9 or 3.11. Then in that case, I will give such kind of conditions with the help of check. Default, for example, if some column required a default value to be set, for example, there is a date column, and in that date column automatically I want that whenever I insert a new row, then the system date would be fetched and inserted into that column, or some default kind of thing, then I will use the default value. Then comes the create index. Basically, it is used to create and retrieve the data from the database very quickly. Let's start with the very first constraint, that the not null constraint. By default, a column can hold null values. So the not null constraint enforces a column to not accept the null values. This enforces the field to always contain a value, which means that you cannot insert a new record or update a record without adding a value to that particular column. For example, SQL ensures that ID, last name and first name columns will not accept the null values when the person's table is created. And what is our syntax? This is create table, table name, ID, data type, it is integer, and then constraint name is not null. Similarly, last name, data type is varchar, it is the length of this column, and again the name of the constraint not null. So this is how you define the constraint not null in your that is during creating a table. But what if you want to provide this constraint after creating a table? Then you need to use the statement that is alter table. So how you will use? Alter table, table name, then what we are doing? We are altering the column. So alter column, which column? Age, its data type, and then the constraint. It need to be noted that in previous example, what we have done, we have defined the age column here with the data type int. Again, whenever you are redefining the things, you will pass on the data type again in the alter statement. So unique key constraint, this is another constraint. The purpose of unique key to ensure that information in the column for each record is unique. And this unique key constraint, if you are defining the unique key as the column constraint, then what will? This is my attribute name, this is my data type, and this is my constraint. The same syntax which we have seen earlier. So it is a how you implement or how you define a constraint at the column level. But what if I want to apply the constraint at the table level? Then what will happen? You will give all the field names and then you will use a keyword that is constraint. And then the name of the field on which you want to apply the constraint, that is the roll number key, roll key, that is the name of my constraint. Then unique, that is a constraint name, and on which particular field I want to apply. I am again repeating, in the case of the column level constraint, you just give the constraint name against the definition of each column. Whereas in the case of a table level constraint, what you will do? First you define all the columns. After that you give a keyword that is constraint. Then the name of the constraint, here the name of the constraint is roll key. And after that, what kind of constraint you want to use? I want to apply the constraint that is unique. On which column you want to apply? That is roll number. What benefit you will get here? For example, I want all my fields, suppose these fields, that is roll number, name and the marks field. All three fields should be, not the marks number, that is the roll number, name and address. Let's suppose I want them to be unique. Then in that case, instead of giving the unique keyword with each and every column, I can use this concept and I can pass multiple columns on which I want to deploy the unique value, unique constraint. The unique constraint ensures that all the values in the column are different. Both the unique and primary key constraints provide a guarantee for the uniqueness for a column. A primary key constraint automatically has a unique constraint, so we don't need to define the unique constraint separately with the primary key. However, we can have many unique constraints per table, but only one primary key constraint per table. This should be noted. That is, if I want to use the primary key, then it is one primary key constraint per table, whereas I could have many unique constraints per table, many unique constraints per table. How I will use the unique key? With the alter table, that is, once I have created the table, now I want to add the unique constraints. Then alter table, table name, add what I want to add, unique, and then the my column name. To name a unique constraint and to define a unique constraint on multiple columns, we can use this alternate SQL syntax, that is alter table, then table name, add constraint. I give the name of the constraint name here, then the keyword, that is unique, and multiple column names. Now, what if later on I want to drop a constraint, or in our SQL, we get the mechanism to drop the constraint also, just like you're dropping the table. So here, what we will do again, what I'm using the alter table command, alter table, table name, drop, and then constraint, keyword constraint, and which constraint I want to drop, UC person, which I have defined over here. Next important constraint is primary key constraint. The primary key constraint uniquely identifies each record in the table. Automatically, it is both unique and not null. As we have already discussed that we could have only one primary key. How I will define the primary key constraint at the column level? Column name, data type, and then the name of the constraint, that is primary key. At the column, at the table level, that is primary key, and then the column name on which I want to give this particular primary key. To allow the naming of a primary key constraint and for defining a primary key constraint on multiple columns, we could use this SQL syntax: create table, ID, not null, last name, not null. After defining all the things, constraint, primary key, that is the name of my constraint, primary key, that is the constraint type, and then these are the two columns on which I want to give the which I want to use as the primary key, as we have seen in earlier in our different other units, that we could have multiple columns serving as a primary key or as a candidate key. This is how, if I want to define multiple columns, I want to take a combination of two or more columns as a primary key. What if I forgot to define the primary key at the creation time? Then I can do so with the help of the alter table, add name of the constraint on which column I want to apply that constraint. So naming of a primary key constraint and for defining on multiple columns, this we have already seen how we will define the multiple columns. Same thing. The only thing is that why I am giving constraint name whenever I am working with the multiple columns. So if later on I want to drop that constraint, I just need to use this constraint name. So if you use an alter table to add a primary key, the primary key columns must have been declared to not null. So when the table was first created, this is very important. If you haven't created or if you haven't created ID with the not null, and if you later on you want to add it as a primary key, then you cannot do so. Then your DBA don't allow to do such kind of activity. Why? Because we are aware that the primary key is both not null as well as unique. So later on, if you want to add this primary key constraint, then that particular column, it should be declared as not null before adding this constraint. How I will drop? Simple, drop keyword constraint and the name of the constraint, that is the PK persons in this case. Next important constraint is the foreign key constraint. Foreign key represent the relationships between the tables. It is a foreign key is a column or a group of columns whose values are derived from the primary key of the same or some other table. The existence of a primary key implies that the table with the foreign key is related to the primary key table from which the foreign key is derived. A foreign key must have a corresponding primary key value in the primary key table to have a meaning. How I will what are the reference whenever I want to use the or I add a foreign key constraint, then what are the important points needed to be taken care of? It rejects an insert or update of a value if a corresponding value does not currently exist in the primary key table. That is, for example, I am having this primary key table and this is my reference foreign key table and here I am having the foreign key add. Here it is PK and here it is FK, let's suppose. So here if let's suppose I am having the values 1, 2 and 3 and here you want to add or insert the value 4. Since it doesn't contain the value 4, so updation or insertion is not allowed in that case. It rejects a delete if it would invalidate a reference constraint. For example, you want to delete some row here and which is violating your reference constraint or the relation constraint, then again it is not allowed. Must reference a primary key or a unique column in a primary key. Suppose this particular table don't have a primary key but it is having ID and you have defined that ID as a unique key, then again you can relate these two columns. Will reference the primary key of the primary key if no column or group of columns is specified in the columns. Then in that case, automatically, for example, you have referred it at this table. Now this table, whatever primary key it contains, automatically this foreign key is got related with the primary key of this table. Must refer a table, not a view. Important point to be noted. Requires that a foreign key column and the constraint column must have matching data types. That is both. So let's suppose here you have given the name ID and here you have given the name student ID. Now both the column names got different, but again they should have the same data type, the same column type, the same length. If they differ, then again the reference constraint got violated. How the foreign key constraint is used? In one table that refers to the primary key in another table. For example, the table with the is called the child table and the table with the primary key is called the parent table. For example, here what I am having a persons table and I am having a orders table. Then this becomes my parent and this becomes my child table. The person ID column in the orders table is a foreign key. Here it is PK and here it is my, here it is my foreign key and here order ID it is my PK. Now a table that is my child table, it could have both primary key, it could have foreign key also. The foreign key constraint prevents invalid data from being inserted into the foreign key column, because it has to be one of the values contained in the parent table, which we have already discussed in the previous slides. How we will define the foreign key constraint at the column level? That is, let's suppose this is my table, child table, orders, order ID, its value is int, not null. I defined it as primary key. Then another column name, and this is my column name which I want to on which I want to have a foreign key, which I want to implement it as a foreign key. Then in that case, person ID, its data type int, it is in continuation. Then foreign key, name of my constraint. Now here I need to provide the name of the column table to which I want to relate. So after foreign key, another keyword also comes, that is references. Then this is the table name to which I want to refer, and this is the column name to which I want to relate. What if I want to apply the foreign key at the table level? Then in that case, what I am having, varchar, then f name, and this is the foreign key on this particular number. Let's suppose foreign key on this particular number, references to which table, and then person ID. That is, whenever you are using the foreign key, you always need to give the table and the column name to which you want to refer with the help of the keyword references. What if I want to add the foreign key during the alter table command? Then in that case, alter table, orders, add foreign key, then the name of the column name, references, all these things, they are same as the previous one. Another important constraint is the default constraint, is used to specify the default value. They are treated as the column values if no values are provided. How we provide them? Create table command, then data type, name of the keyword. In this case, I need to provide the default value. Important, don't use the assignment operator here, just the name of the keyword and what value you want to assign this value. It could be my it could be my number, it could be my string, anything. Simple example, here we are creating the table with the constraint not null, then name with the constraint, it is, again it is, we have defined. Now in this case I have used two constraints, one is not null and another one is default, and in default I am always entering the name Ramesh. Then age, integer, again not null and default value, then address, default is always this, like this. So following queries, values into this table using the insert statement. For example, you have inserted only this thing, but automatically my values got updated. Why? Because other things we have assumed from this constraint, default constraint which we added here. So for example, in this we haven't provided other things, only the ID value, then the Ramesh, this and this values, they are my default ones. But in this insert statement, since I am providing the values, so in this row, it contains the values which I have inserted here. Default constraint, that is during the alter table time. So alter table, then alter column, column name, set default value. The same thing how we are going the things. How I will drop it? Alter table, then alter column, column name, and drop default. Whatever I want to drop the constraint. So these are the few constraints which we have discussed or seen today in this lecture. So these are the references which I have used here. Thank you and Jai Hind.